in the era of COVID-19 that's just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show. Well, during the pandemic, we've heard a lot from the media about nursing homes, assisted living, in-home care, but we're not hearing a lot about hospice, and that needs to change. That's why I invited Chad Higbee on my show. He is the founder and CEO of Hope Healthcare, as well as being on the board, the president of the board of the Texas and New Mexico Hospice Organization.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Before we get into COVID-19, let's just kind of talk about the myths about hospice, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions.
I think probably the prevalent things that we hear, from folks that ask us what we do for a vocation is, what do you do? And it's usually one of two responses, or how do you do that? And so there's the stats, modern day stats continue to drive the notion that it's only a service that's really for brink of death type care, the last couple of days of life, when in essence, the folks that pushed for the Medicare benefit back in the early 80s, this was enacted under Medicare Part A, the hospitalization part of the insurance, in 1983, and became a full-blown Medicare benefit that folks could elect at the end of life. And the exact Medicare language is, if the disease progresses its normal course, that patient has approximately 6 months of life or less left. And so it's a way for folks not to aggressively treat symptoms and pain, but to receive comfort at the end of their life. Because you always, when you talk about death and dying, if that's ever brought up around the dinner table, which it rarely is, folks mostly, if you ask them, they just want to go to sleep and never wake up. I mean, I think if you ask people, there's no pain, there's no symptoms, there's no bad associations with that type of death, one that's dignified, in your own bed, in a place of comfort. And that's really, the stats continue to tell us that that's where people want to be. But unfortunately, for whatever reason or reasons, they're not usually there. And so we unfortunately get folks at the end of life, about 1 in every 3, in hospice service across the country, not just Texas or our organization, but across the country, are on service for about 10 days or less. Again, when it was designed to be 106 months or more. And so if you increase that to the 30-day mark, it's about 60 to 65% have hospice care less than 30 days. So there's a real quandary, and the biggest challenge in the industry right now is getting out the word that that folks understand exactly what it is that we do, the services that we can provide, and the underpinning of care that we can bring to the home, wherever that person calls home, and bring that comfort and that dignity to them.
My wife's grandmother had hospice care in her final days, and I had a chance to observe just how much caring the hospice employee had for the dignity of life and our family, and helping us use the right words, because I think families are well intentioned, but sometimes they can say stuff that stirs up their loved one.
Yeah, there's so many different scenarios. If you've got family members and you're in healthcare, like for example, my family looks to me as like the family doctor. I'm not even medical. It's just because I'm in the industry, have a base of knowledge, been doing this for 25 years. So there's a general push to those that may be in our industry, because just talked with a nurse recently, and her her regret is that she was taking care of her own dad. She was caregiver aunt, nurse, and daughter. But she really wanted this to be the daughter, to reminisce, to think about times when she was much younger, when she was a girl. But she was unable to do that because she was in go mode, in task mode, and trying to take care of not only her mother, but her dying father as well. And that's a really hard place to be in. So we get those types of situations. We say, hey, it's our job to be the caregivers, to come in, not to just take over and say, get out of the way, because what we do is incorporate that family into that caregiving scenario, wherever that may be, whether it's at home or a nursing facility or assisted living or even in the hospital in the last days. So we really encourage and advocate for those families to be present if that's what they desire. And that's the beauty of hospice care, in that the patient and the family really get to derive a lot of the care.
We've got some pictures off your Facebook that we're going to put up while we're talking about this. Let's talk about COVID-19. How did that change your industry?
You know, a lot of right now, well, in the last 4 or 5 years, as a consistent stat, a lot of the deaths in the country take place in the hospital and nursing facility. Only about 25% take place in the home. So 75% of all the deaths are still institutional, but you know, most folks want to be at home. And COVID-19 is really, you know, because of the uncertainty of what we were dealing with early on. There was just a lot of concern for that vulnerable population that were institutionalized, whether in hospitals or nursing homes in particular. And so all of a sudden, when we had almost daily contact with that loved one that was on hospice services or that patient that we were serving, you know, you take away the contact from the families instantaneously, you take away the contact from the staff, the hospice staff coming in, and you take away, in a lot of instances, the hands-on compassion that the facility staff was giving or the hospital staff was giving, because of the distancing that we had to enact and that we felt was best to follow. And so that has changed our industry radically, because truly, out of sight, out of mind, people don't think about the service in a lot of ways until they really need you, and then we have to be ready to go. But even more so with COVID, there's been this fear of not wanting to cause an untimely death by some vulnerable elderly person getting this disease or this virus from others. And so social isolationism is what we've done, and that really hasn't worked well either. But it's just been one of those quandaries,
Sure.
you know, that we've been in. It's just we're feeling our way through this. Things are starting to open back up, so that's a good thing. And you know, it's really a blessed thing to be able to see and be a part of those reunions when they haven't seen loved ones in 6-8 months.
Social isolation can be really devastating to the senior, can't it?
It can. I mean, you know, one of the things that we already deal with is you get towards the end of life and it's a person's 90 plus years old. We think because it's something they did for us when we were children, hey, eat. You love this. I mean, you know, a lot of we're getting ready to head into the holidays, and so we're that meal time, that spending together time as a family, we want to be able to do something for our dying loved ones. So we often go, hey, eat this. They often don't feel like eating. So this adult failure to thrive is a real deal. It's very similar to a pediatric failure to thrive, where for whatever reasons, there's no specific illness other than that person is just not taking in enough nutrition, food, and they just begin to sort of, in a sense, before our own eyes, wither away. And it's hard because whereas there might have been a slight Alzheimer's, you know, early diagnosis, but that really progresses because there's no consistency of routine, which folks need with Alzheimer's disease. And when you take everyone totally out of life, they're like in a vacuum by themselves, and it's really detrimental.
Let's talk about your association. We've got some video of a board meeting from a couple of years ago. It's an advocacy group. Tell us what are some of the issues that you guys deal with? I
mean, we advocate as being an owner-operator. It's a unique position, but also on being on this board. As you see there's a group of owner-operators, leaders, executive directors in our field in the states of Texas and New Mexico. We have a combined state group just because Texas, behind California, is probably the most active in terms of Medicare billing, things like that. So it does bring a voice, and Texas does have a voice in the country when it comes to hospice and what we do and the legislation that we advocate for in Washington, D.C. on the Hill. And so this group really sets the tone, provides educational opportunities for our members, for the hospices in the states of New Mexico and Colorado. We've talked at different times to other states because it's a bit of a struggle. Colorado, Oklahoma, different states that are contiguous to us about forming a larger group, but we've been very content to stay where we are with Texas and New Mexico. So again, our purpose is to advocate for programs across the state that are members with educational opportunities, with annual conferences, and all of that's just that learning so we can give back to those that we're serving so we can just be better prepared.
How onerous is the government when it comes to hospice? Are they...
We were talking about jokes earlier, right, about Nebraska OU football.
Yeah.
We're talking, there's nothing else besides hospice that's more regulated than nuclear power.
Really?
Well, I don't know if that's a joke, or I've never really seen that in fine print, but there is a lot of layers of bureaucracy because unfortunately there are bad players in the industry across the country from in market to market. And so the majority of the operators get into this because they want to help. I know when I first found out about what hospice was, I thought, man, what a great thing to be able to actually get paid for helping people.
Yeah.
I sort of a softie, grew up mama's boy, if you will, but really liked being able to help others in times of need. I was always the guy on the football team taking up for the kids that were getting bullied. So it's just that it's that type of personality, the fixers, the nurturers. It's an industry dominated by ladies. For the most part, because you look at the aggregate across even my own organization, out of about 100 employees in 3 locations, we have about 7 or 8 guys. And most of those are in sort of male roles, chaplaincy, administration, some in marketing, things like that. But for the most part, it's a female-dominated industry. A lot of good leaders that are ladies that have stepped to the front in our organization, as well as statewide and nationwide. But
yeah. Well, this has been very enlightening. We're going to end with a couple of websites. First, your website, hopehealthcareus.com, is your company, and then your association is txmhospice.org.
NM for New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Yeah,
Sorry about
yeah.
that. Yep. Okay, there you go. It's on the screen. And thank you, Chad. You've been an
Absolutely.
amazing guest.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.